All right, so what do we have here?
I think the ideal way to grow vegetables is in a raised bed. It's really the ideal way to grow everything. It saves your back from bending over. It gets your plants up out of the clay and up out of the poor soil, and you can put all your good soil in this nice raised bed. And
Which
it's all
is this right here.
Yes,
Just raised off the
yeah.
ground.
This is just some 2x4s, all nailed together. You could do it with concrete blocks. You could do it with railroad ties.
Oh,
You could
wow.
do it. I've seen people even use old tires and things like that and recycle
Okay.
tires. I don't recommend that because it's just kind of
Yeah.
redneck looking.
Right.
But the benefits of the raised bed is they're just so easy to work, and you don't have to bend all the way over to pull your weeds out. You
Yeah.
don't have to bend all the way over to harvest your plants. And so it just makes all of your gardening easier. And in this particular raised bed, they've taken PVC pipe and they've run it down there, and then they have this plastic. So it's going to give it some extra protection in the
Okay.
winter time or in the springtime when you're planting out your plants and you get a late frost. You
Yeah.
can just pull your plastic over it and
Okay,
protect your
okay.
plants.
Wow.
Now, these particular plants that are in this bed are are called cold weather plants or cold season crops. And this is carrots.
Oh, wow. Oh, look at the
little baby
baby
carrot.
carrots. How cool is that?
And carrots are planted, these were planted in the fall, or you could plant them late summer in the fall, or you could plant them very early spring. And then
Okay.
you would harvest them throughout the winter in this bed, and then you would harvest them up until it starts to get hot in the summertime.
Okay.
And some of the other cool crops would be broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, all of the greens, and then onions, potatoes. Those are all cold weather crops. They do not like it hot. And when it gets hot, those cold weather crops will put a seed up. When the seed comes up, that means they have turned bitter and they're not
wow.
good to eat anymore.
Okay. Wow.
And then once spring rolls around, you would take this crop out and you would put in what's called a warm weather crop. And that would be something like tomatoes, peppers, squash, melons are all warm weather crops. And so ideally what you would be doing is while this is out here in the springtime, you would start your new crop, your warm weather crop, inside.
Okay.
And then, so it's growing, and then you'll take this one out, and then by the time you take this out, your new
can put
crop
the
will be
other
big,
ones in.
and you can
Okay.
set it out.
Oh, very
And
cool.
real quick, we'll talk a little bit about growing your plants on the inside and getting
Yes.
your seeds germinated.
So how do we start from the basics? Okay.
Yeah, this is a soil, and I recommend doing a soilless mix. This is made of peat moss and what's called vermiculite on this side, and it's a very fine textured soil. And on this side, this is rice hulls that are in this soil, and it's a coarser texture soil. You want to use fine textured soils with the smaller seeds. You want to use coarser, the bigger the seed, the coarser the soil that you want to use.
Okay.
And I actually
And
have
you just bought those types of soil at the garden
those
store.
are store-bought soils. Oh, I have some
Okay.
seeds around. And then you would put this soil in this container.
Okay.
And so I call this a community flat. So I would fill this with this soil. I would
Okay.
probably use this fine textured soil. And then I would take my seeds when it's filled with soil and I would sprinkle my seeds in there.
Okay.
And then as the seeds grow, you would take those seeds out and then transplant them into a bigger pot. And again, I would do that with smaller seeds. With the bigger seeds, I might go to this cell tray.
Okay.
So a seed like a squash seed is fairly large, and you just put one squash seed per cell. And I would use the coarser soil with the larger seed.
Okay.
And then for real big seeds
And these right here have hole. It's
yes,
has holes on the
they're
bottom. Okay.
They have great drainage, as well as the community flat
Okay.
has good drainage as well, and that's very important. And then for really big seeds like a melon, you might use something like this peat pot
Okay.
or this 4-inch size pot, and because a melon seed is quite large, and
Okay.
so you really wouldn't want to put it in the community flat.
Okay.
And then if I have my seeds outdoors, this is a great little tool right here. It's a water, and it puts out a very fine mist. When you go to water your seeds, especially when they're outside, a heavy stream of water will just knock your seed all over the place, and so you'll plant it here and it'll end up way
Oh
over
my
there.
gosh. Okay.
And this nice mister will mist your seeds without moving the seeds around your garden.
Okay.
And there's certain seeds that I like to plant straight into the ground. without doing them inside. Things like all of your zucchini, yellow squash, okra, they would be planted outside. And again, maybe later we'll talk about planting times. That's very important. Different seeds like to be planted at different times. So the carrots in the fall, the tomatoes in the spring, and then okra, you don't even want to plant it until June or so.
Oh, wow.
It is a heat lover, and so if you plant it too early, it'll just sit there. A lot of times the seed will rot, and so timing is very important on when you plant your seed out.
Okay. So like going back to this, a simple one. Say I were planting something that's small seed, like I don't know what that would be.
Lettuce.
Okay, so I would put my soil in here first, right? Like a thin layer maybe of soil.
So I would say about halfway up.
Okay, and then I would just sprinkle the seeds
you would
on
sprinkle
there.
the seeds around.
Does it matter how many seeds? Or?
Depends on how much lettuce that you want to grow.
Okay.
And so if you have a really big bed, and then you would go back and check usually on your seed package, you will say plant this many inches apart, this many feet apart. And so lettuce you're going to plant probably around 8 to 12 inches. And so you just measure your bed and say, well, this is how many I'd want. And then I'd usually plant about twice as many seeds as I was going to put out.
Oh, okay.
And so that way you have extra just in case some die, some don't come up. And then I would do that in one area, and then I go down a little bit and I might plant my spinach seed in the same flat.
So you would mix them?
Yeah, and I'd take a little popsicle stick or something and write down spinach and stick it in front of this one. Then I'd plant there, and I'd put a popsicle stick that said lettuce, and then I'd just go on down the line.
So once I sprinkle my seeds, do I put more dirt on top or no?
It again depends on the seed. Lettuce does not like to be covered, and so I just like to take my hand and push on top of the lettuce and just kind of snug it into the soil.
Okay.
Spinach, then I would take more soil and I would sprinkle it on top, just a little bit of soil.
Okay.
A good rule of thumb, if it's a tiny seed, a lot of times you don't want to cover it at all. If it's a larger seed, a good rule of thumb is you want to bury it about the size of the seed. So if the seed is a 1/4 inch long, you want to put a 1/4 inch of soil on top of that seed.
Okay. Where would my compost come in, or do I not even do that right now?
The compost is when you take this out of the flat and you set it out into the
Oh,
garden.
okay.
And what I would do when the seed, a good rule of thumb is your seed will come up and it'll put on one set of leaves.
Okay.
Then the seed will come up again and it will put on a second set of leaves. When that second set of leaves comes on, then you can transplant out of this tray. And you may transplant into something like this and grow it on a little bit larger. And then this would be set out into the garden.
Into the garden. Okay. And how, like in terms of watering, how often do you, when you're growing it indoors or starting, how often?
You want to keep it nice and moist. And something else I like to do is I would cover this with this top, and that will help to keep the humidity in there and help keep your seeds moist. And I would water my seeds usually around every other day.
Okay.
But what I like to do is pick up a little bit of the soil, squeeze it in between my fingers, and if it's nice and wet and you can squeeze some water out of it, I would not water at all. If it starts to get a little crumbly, then I would go ahead and water after that.
Okay. And this tray right here would be inside. It would be indoors for
that would be sitting in a windowsill. And if you have a fluorescent light, you could put a fluorescent light right over the top of the tray, and that is even better for the plants.
Okay.
If you're setting it in a window, you want to set it on the south or the west side of the house, facing south or west, so it gets a lot of sun. You wouldn't want to put it in a north window because not a lot of straight light comes into a north window.
Okay. Wow.
And
Very
then,
cool.
so after that, you would plant your plants out into the garden. And then what I like to do after that is I would mulch the plants. And what a mulch is going to hold moisture. It's going to help keep the weeds out, because you're going to get that plant in there. You're going to be watering it, fertilizing it. Well, weeds like that as well. And so the weeds are going to come up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would take some of the compost and I would put about 1 inch of compost all over my entire garden. And that will help to conserve the moisture to your plant. And it will also help to regulate that soil temperature so the soil doesn't get too hot or too cold, and it'll help keep those weeds out as well.
So say I have these growing inside, and then I'm out here preparing my raised bed. So the first thing after I build the structure, I would put just regular soil in here.
Soil and compost.
So I'd get a bag of soil from
Yeah.
the store
Topsoil.
and just put like a certain layer, like how thick, just didn't really matter.
This bed here is probably about 1.5 feet high.
Okay.
I think you want to go at least 1 foot high.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of mixtures that folks use. Some people will use 1/3 peat moss, 1/3 compost, 1/3 perlite or vermiculite, which is a almost looks like foam substance, and that helps with drainage.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different recipes for mixing your soil. I like a good topsoil, that not a bag topsoil, but a topsoil that you might buy in bulk at a rock yard or
Okay.
something like that. And a good topsoil is going to look about like that. And then
Okay.
you're going to mix your compost with that topsoil.
So I don't need to put like gravel or pebbles or anything down on the base.
No,
just topsoil.
the bed itself should drain well, simply because its gravity will take that water on
Okay.
down through the bed.
Okay. So I put my topsoil, then I take like about 1 foot of topsoil, then half a foot of compost on top of it.
That's about right.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I use my rake maybe and mix them together,
Yeah,
or I
I
don't
would probably
need to?
use a shovel and mix it
Okay.
together, and mix it together real good, nice
Okay.
and mixed completely,
Okay.
homogeneous, and then you're ready to plant. Now I might water it down real good and let it settle for a day or two,
Okay.
and then you're ready to plant.
And then it was when you'd pull out your tape measure and like.
Yes, I'd stake
You
it
would,
out,
okay.
get my nice tight rows. And what I like to do is I like to plan it all out in my head. I'll say, well, this is how big my raised bed is. This is the things I want to plant. I'll read the seed packet, figure out this is my spacing, and then
Okay.
I'll sketch it all out. And it doesn't need to be a real detailed sketch, but I will sketch it all out so I know how much of each one that I'm planting. And that helps me out when I go back out to plant. It also
Okay.
helps you out when you're ordering your seeds and when you're planting your seeds, to know how much that you're going to germinate.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
And then you'll get them planted, then you'll mulch them with a good layer of mulch, and then you'll just keep them watered throughout the season.
And probably watering every other day, or I guess it'll just depend.
Yeah, they like about 1 inch of water per week. So
Okay.
if you're using just a hose, it's hard to tell what 1 inch is.
Okay.
If you're getting rain, you can tell you can just look at the news and say,
Yeah.
well, we got 1 inch this week, so I don't need to water this week. Another thing you can do is use a little sprinkler on them and set a drinking glass and see when 1 inch comes into the drinking glass.
Okay.
But when you have a raised bed, it's very difficult to overwater. That's the
Okay.
benefit of the raised bed, because gravity's taking that water down through. So you can almost water daily. I'll usually water every 3 or 4 days, but there's so many variables to that.